wonderful. When I listen to these speakers, suddenly all of this hi-fi stuff begins to make a little sense. So, I'm just going to come right out and say it. The loudspeakers I'm about to review may in fact be the best all-around performers that I've heard at the $15,000 price point. Now, I'm going to touch on the reasons why a little bit later, but for now, I want to talk about the company that makes them. And in short, the company's name is Rosso Fiorentino. They're based out of Florence, Italy, and I think they have one distinct advantage that really sets them apart from other manufacturers, and that's the fact that the owner and founder of the company, a guy by the name of Francesco, not only does he have a degree in electroacoustic engineering, but he has an unprecedented access to live music. And that's because the Rosso Fiorentino headquarters is essentially a castle. That's right, a freaking castle. So what happens is you have tons of musicians going to this location to perform small concerts. And meanwhile, this is just this guy's place of work. So I think when you sit down and you listen to one of his products, you can easily hear the influence that live music has on it. Because let's face facts, almost nobody in the industry has this kind of reference level. He really does stand alone in this regard. And it's part of the reason why I love the products, and it's part of the reason why I'm so excited to share with you all my take on the original Volterra floor standing loudspeaker. And here's the Volterra. So first things first, leave it to the Italians to take a coffin-looking speaker and to somehow make it look elegant. Now, before I begin to talk about this speaker, I need to emphasize the fact that this is the original Volterra that was imported into the United States roughly 5 or 6 years ago. It is not the latest version. Now, the latest version has a lot of upgrades, and I'm going to discuss those upgrades as I talk about this speaker. So let's start with the driver complement. And going from the top down, let's start with the super tweeter. Now, this tweeter is designed to go up to 100 kilohertz. That is a lot of treble. And the original featured a super tweeter from Japan called the Murata tweeter. Unfortunately, it is no longer being made, so Rosso Fiorentino had to design from scratch their own super tweeter. Next, we have a 1-inch soft dome by Morel, followed by a 6.5-inch Peerless Nomex woofer. And on the bottom, we have an 8-inch Peerless Nomex woofer. Now, this is a 2.5-way design, and it's very unique in the fact that this woofer runs completely wide open and is ported on the back, whereas the woofer on the bottom is sealed. And the point there is to make sure that this speaker will deliver bass that sounds good in many different room types and on many different forms of equipment. So the one thing you're going to notice is this shiny reflective baffle. This is actually made of a perspex material. It loves to attract fingerprints and all those kind of things. The good news is that this is no longer on the Volterra. The new Volterra features a solid aluminum baffle. And not only that, but it actually screwed all the way to the back of the speaker. So this thing is braced very, very, very well. Also, the new speaker is going to have some differences in terms of the binding post. The binding posts on the back of this speaker, I forget if they're WBT, but they're off the shelf. I just have a Jersey accent. They're off the shelf binding posts, whereas the new binding posts are designed from scratch, completely in-house by Francesco. Also, the plinth on this speaker is just a regular HDF material, whereas the new plinth, if I remember correctly, is based off of a marble composite material. Also, the spikes that came with these speakers were just okay. The new spikes, however, are out of this world amazing. Dare I say, almost as good as the spikes from Track Audio, and now that's really saying something. So overall, the new speaker definitely brings a lot of upgrades to the table, but when you get right down to it, a Volterra is a Volterra. They still have similar-ish signatures to the sound, so that brings me to how they sound. So I kickstarted this review with a pretty bold claim, and now's going to be my opportunity to back up why I think these speakers are some of the better all-around performers that you can get for $15,000. So to begin, they're very easy to use. Now, you would think that this shouldn't be an unusual thing at all, right? But sadly, one of the quirks about hi-fi is that as you ascend up the price scale, speakers tend to become more finicky about ultra-precise placement, about equipment matching. And the cool thing about Rosso is, actually, they're pretty laid-back speakers. You can put them in just about any environment and get good sound. Now, of course, if you treat them well and you work hard to dial them in, they're going to reward you with some world-class performance. But the point is, you don't necessarily need to do that in order to enjoy them. And then we have the second thing, and the most important thing, their sound. Now, what you need to know about me is I'm big on tone, or timbre as some people call it. I want a speaker to sound like a real instrument, and the Volterras do this in a way that I just haven't heard from most other loudspeakers. They're so tonally accurate. The little nuances that occur between the interplay of various instruments, especially like woodwinds and so on and so forth, these speakers just nail it. And it's honestly very addicting. Now, when it comes to their presentation, I would say that they have a slightly dark character to them, and they definitely rest on the warm side of neutral. Now, the newer Volterras have gone more in the linear direction, but they still have that warmth there. Now, breaking things down into individual specifics, let's start with the bass. So the bass is going to be, it's like most speakers in their class, it's going to be very deep, it's going to hit pretty hard for what it is, but ultimately it's going to have a slightly warm character to it. Now, it's not going to be flabby or anything close to that, but there's going to be a little bit extra down low, which I actually like. Now, as far as the mid-range is concerned, the mid-range is wonderfully articulate, wonderfully open, wonderfully clear. Now, there is a slight organic touch to it, and I personally like that. It gives the music a little bit of meat on the bone. And then we have the top end. And guys, this is where I think Rosso Fiorentino walks away from the competition. That super tweeter combination, their implementation of it is absolutely out of this world. I mean, for decades now, audiophiles have been looking for what I call the unicorn, which is treble that's articulate, it's airy, it has basically all the abilities to show you what a good recording has to offer, while at the same time being just smooth enough for you to listen to what I call real-world music or poor recordings. And most speakers can't do that. Most speakers air to one direction or the other. Either they're very smooth or they're very kind of discriminating. The Volterra has a top end that does just that. You get all this air, this presence, this articulation, but if you want to listen to a poor recording, it's not going to send you for the hills. You're not going to rush to the system to turn it off or to turn down the volume. They are going to sound absolutely fantastic across a wide variety of recording types. So that's just a wonderful thing. Now, as far as imaging is concerned, the one thing you need to know is that these speakers were designed to be completely phase correct. So what that means is the imaging is going to basically hinge on the recording itself. So instead of these speakers throwing out this wall of sound all the time, what they're going to do is they're just going to give you what the recording gives you. So if you have a recording that gives you that wall of sound, that's what you're going to hear. But if it's going to be a little more compressed, well, that's also what you're going to hear. And lastly, I gotta say, these speakers have pretty good power handling characteristics for their size. Now, no, they're not gonna rip the paint off the walls or anything like that, which actually leads me to some of the things that these speakers do not excel with. As with all things in life, nothing is perfect, so now let's talk about some of the things that they could probably use a little bit of help with. So there are 3 caveats to these speakers that you need to know about before you buy them. The first is, if you're the kind of listener that likes that visceral sensation, that dynamic slam that just hits you in the chest, yeah, these speakers aren't for you. They just flat out won't move the kind of air that it takes to give you that sensation. Following up on that, if you like to listen at ridiculously loud volumes, we're talking about 100 dB or higher, yeah, forget it. These definitely are not for you. And it's not to say they aren't dynamic or that they can't play loud, but this just isn't what they were designed for. So if that describes your listening habits, yeah, check out the JBL Array 1400s. Now, the second thing is going to be efficiency. It's not to say that these speakers are not power efficient. You can hook them up to a 25 watt per channel tube amp and get good sound. But if you listen to real world music at average listening volumes, you're probably going to want some power. Now I say that because I run a 180 watt per channel integrated amplifier that uses a pretty beastly power supply, and these speakers love all of that juice. So I would definitely pair them up with a powerful amplifier if you have access to one. Now, the last thing has nothing at all to do with performance, and that is the fact that it's so difficult to audition these speakers. And really, that's par for the course. It's a brand new company. They're trying desperately to correct that situation, but for now, auditioning them is going to be pretty tough. So unless you're either A, lucky enough to have a dealer nearby, you're probably going to have to B, travel somewhere to audition them beforehand. Otherwise, they're fantastic all-around loudspeakers, and that leads me to my final thoughts. So perhaps the biggest compliment that I can give these speakers, aside from the fact that I ended up buying them, is I really do feel like they compete with the best of the best at their price point. And for a new company and a brand new model, I mean, this is outright impressive. This is a company that you guys should really keep your eye on. They're poised to do great things, and they're not content with being a small company. These guys want to become larger. They want to make an impact. And if what I hear is any indication of what they're capable of, then I have no doubt that if they play their cards right, they're going to make that impact. So what can I say? They're fantastic loudspeakers. I'm very happy to now call them mine. And I hope that one day, those of you out there who are interested will be able to say the same thing. So with that said, thanks for watching, guys, and until next time, peace.